And as you can imagine, just kind of doing the math in your head at how fast this would get eliminated, and then we just keep doing that, keep doing that, keep doing that. Episode 16. So, for those that remember, last week we talked about the different ways that debt can be structured. So today what we're going to talk about is getting into the specifics of organizing debt, the different ways to do it, different approaches, different methods, and different opportunities that as we, whether we're talking with friends, family, or we need this ourselves, we just understand it a little bit better and how to get our debt organized. And as silly as this sounds, step one in becoming debt-free, which is really, if you look at life and money situations, there's kind of two things that people are really striving for in their financial life. One is to become debt-free, and two is to become financially independent. And so, again, as silly as this first step may seem, it is critically important that we have the belief, the goal, and the desire. Well, one, the desire to get out of debt, that's kind of obvious, but the belief that we can, and the mentality that, we're savers, not people that are going to be in debt the rest of our lives. And so we have to be very careful what we say, because what we say becomes what we attract, and what we say is what we do, and what we focus our attention on increases. And I can't look through the windshield and the rear view mirror at the same time, but I also can't look in the rear view mirror and drive forward. And so debt is something that is meant to, of course there's interesting conditions that could change this, but it's to set up a plan, and the windshield be my savings and investing and my top line and making more money, and then the debt should be my rear view mirror, where I've set up a plan, and every once in a while I look into the rear view mirror and make sure that this debt plan is working. Because if I focus on debt all the time, well, I can't really focus on my savings and my investments, or I'm giving too much energy to my debt and energizing my debt a little bit more. So it is a mentality thing, a determination that I will be debt-free, and that's step one. Right? And so once we've decided that, jumping into what we have talked about on previous episodes is just getting organized. So number one is to get organized. And so this is sometimes something where we kind of have to face reality a little bit and write out, what debt do I have? What is the interest rate on all that debt? What are the payments on all that debt? And for some of us, this may be something that's somewhat obvious, but to some people, they've never done this before. They've got things on their credit they don't even remember or know about that have been on there forever. And it may be worth it to, get on some credit reporting site. There's a bunch of them. freecreditreport.com, I think, is one that still exists. Or if you know a loan officer or somebody that you can get a credit report pulled and see what's on there, what's bogging it down. Is there something in collections? Is there something that I haven't been paying attention to? But, what debt do I have? List them out. What are the balances? What are the interest rates? What are the payments? What are the terms of the loan? When am I going to be debt-free? And get it all on paper. And again, another thing that this does psychologically is if all the debt and the worry about debt is up in my head and I'm thinking about it all the time, well, this is like a way to just kind of dump it out, physically dump it out on paper, look at it, get organized. But then what that does to your confidence is getting it organized, right? But then the thing that kills our confidence is we get it organized and then we don't stick to the plan. And so getting it organized, first of all, is just knowing what is it that I have and where do I start? So number one, I guess that'd be number two. Number one is the mentality. Number two is going to be get it organized. So there's several approaches. So let's talk about one. One that the way this is something that's been used for a long time, but the way that it's best described is called, and this is one of the ways, so this is a subcategory of number 2, is called the debt snowball. Okay, so in my opinion, there should be some, before the debt snowball is done, and we'll talk about this on episode 17, is, and let me make a note to myself so we do, 17, we'll talk about the different ways to get it into a better, different ways to get it into a better interest situation. But once we can get that done, is the debt snowball is something that a lot of clients, a lot of people have used in the past as we help them eliminate their debt. So, debt snowball. Basically what it is why do they call it the debt snowball? Is if you remember, when I was a kid, one of the most popular cartoons on TV was Looney Tunes, and it still sort of is. I think Looney Tunes has been around for like 150 years or something ridiculous. Not that long, but it's been around a long time. And so you had the coyote that's always after the roadrunner, and that's usually the setting where this would happen, where he's trying to get the roadrunner, and he's at the top of the mountain, and it's whether it's a big boulder or it's a snowball, and he's trying to roll up the snowball to get it going down the mountain, and because the longer the snowball goes down the mountain, the more speed it tends to get, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it rolls down the mountain. Usually, Wile E. Coyote would get caught in that snowball for some reason, and it didn't turn out the way that he wanted. But that's not what we're talking about, not going the way we want. But just the idea of the debt snowball is that we have our debt that gets smaller and smaller as we go, and it's blasting through all the debt. But the reason it's called a debt snowball is because of what the payments do in an organized way. So, for example, let's say we have a family. Let me just think of one I met with recently that had some debt. Here's one. So we have a client, and so they list out all their debts, and we're going to list them out. Smallest. There's a couple of ways to do this. There's the mathematic way, and then there's the human behavior way, which I've talked about several times and have had several rants about. And so you can do it as a highest interest approach first, or a highest balance approach first. So for just the sake of the visual, we're going to do it as the balance first. So if we took and we did the lowest, attacked the lowest balance first and organized it that way, again, and this is going to be more for the human behavior of it. Does black work? Yes. And so here's a family that they had just bought it was either a sewing machine or embroidery machine or something like that, and they owed about $1,800 on it. Okay, so that one's $1,800. Okay, and then they have some credit cards. If we consolidated all the credit cards, not saying that we did, but if we were to put all their credit cards together, they have 4 credit cards, but the smallest one had about a $2,500 balance on it, and I know that's really small, but you can see through the visual. Then they had another credit card that was at about $3,000. Let's write it like that. And they had another one that was at about $5,500, so we'll say $5,000. Then their fourth one was actually at $12,000. Okay, so $12,000 on that one. So this is the embroidery machine. This is credit card, credit card, credit card, credit card. Then they had a car loan. We might need to go down even further. That's fine. So then they had a car loan that was in the $30,000 range, and then they had student loans that were about $50,000, and then the last one, yeah, it looks like we're doing this one. Will just go off the bottom of the whiteboard here. This black is not wanting to participate. So they actually had two mortgages. So like if we split that one in half, they had a first and a second on their home, and so that's what their debt looked like if we organized it from the smallest balance to the biggest balance. Okay, so the idea of the debt snowball is, again, some of you have heard of this, maybe some of you haven't. I remember the first time I heard of it, I just thought, you know, it was just a genius idea. So let's say we look at the payments, and the payment on the embroidery machine is $100. So payment to the embroidery machine is $100. I'm gonna see if I can move this. $100 here. Let's say minimum payment on $2,500 is going to be about $50–60. Then maybe 70 here, and maybe $100 here. Then we got the credit card at $12,000. I remember that one was $240. Then you got the car, a $30,000 car. Your payment's going to be looking around $400. Then you've got the student loans, $50,000. Those payments were about $450. And then you've got the house. It was 11 something, like 1120, 1140, 1150, something like that. Okay, so we've got it all organized. We've got the debts organized out. And so this is where a lot of people would say, well, you know, if you've got something that's at, you know, if this credit card here is at, you know, 28%, then it's actually going to be better to attack that one first because of how high the interest is. Well, I can appreciate the logic behind that because it is logical. Logically, that makes sense. But I don't know how many human beings you know. Most of them are not logical. If they were logical, maybe they wouldn't have all this debt. It was an emotional thing. Maybe this credit card, you know, is a mattress from, you know, the mattress store, the Purple mattress or the Burrito mattress or whatever these mattresses are these days, that are $4,000, $3,000. And so emotionally, they're going to make that purchase because logically, it doesn't make a ton of sense to put it on a credit card. So here's how human beings work. If we attacked this one first, how long is it going to be until that one's completely paid off and we feel momentum in paying off our debt? Well, if we're able to make 100, maybe plus a little bit more, it's going to take a long time, 4 years before that one's paid off, 3, 4, 5 years, and so there's not very much momentum. Where if we look at an $1,800 balance, we can pay that one off faster, giving us emotional momentum to then pay off the next one, the next one, the next one. So here's how the debt snowball works. Sometimes people pay extra to one of these, like their mortgage. You know, they're attacking the very most, the biggest one first, paying a little bit extra because it's going to save them a year. Well, how about we save them 12 years and organize it and do the whole plan? So how the debt snowball is going to work is, let's say they're paying any extra to any of these, you know, maybe an extra $10 here, an extra $20 here, an extra $30 here, is the focus of the debt snowball is to absolutely eliminate this one, in my opinion, the smallest balance first. And so if we can get $10 from here, $10 from here, $30 from here, well, that's an extra $50. So what we do is we make the regular payment on all of these, and then we add that 50 to the first one. Or maybe we've got a little bit of discretionary money after making sure we have an emergency fund, insurance, and long-term setup, is we can take a little bit of that discretionary and add it to our debt plan. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pay $150, or let's say $200 to this one, $200 to the embroidery machine or whatever it is, until this one is completely eliminated and we just pay the regular payment on all the rest of them. Then what we do is, as soon as we're done using that $200 here, we get to the end and we've been paying 60, 60, 60, 60. So now what we do is we do 60 plus 200. Our budget doesn't change, and we roll the 200 here and make a $260 payment, this original 60, plus the 200 going to this, until this one's completely eliminated. Then we take that 260 and we add it to this one. So now we're doing 70 plus rolling the payment from this one of 260. So again, our budget doesn't change at all. Our outgo is the same as it was before. We make the regular minimum payments to all of these and attack this one till this one's totally gone. Then we're at, you know, the 70 plus 260 plus the 100 until this one's completely eliminated. Then we roll that to where we're paying 70. Well, I guess, yeah, 70 plus 260 plus 100 that we were paying to this, plus 240. And as you can imagine, just kind of doing the math in your head at how fast this would get eliminated. And then we just keep doing that, keep doing that, keep doing that, all the way till if you were to keep doing that program, and there's a template on Excel, Microsoft Excel, or I'm sure on Google Sheets, or there's a website called powerpay.org. PowerPay, can we see right here if I read it? Yes. powerpay.org, that you can do all of this for free. You create a login and a password, and no, they don't send you a bunch of advertisements or anything like that. But powerpay.org that lets you organize this, and there's even a little thing at the top where you can change it to where it's organized by highest interest first, lowest balance first, a whole bunch of different ways to organize it, but then it shows by doing this and sticking to the plan how much interest it actually saves the person. And so the idea is if we're going to pay interest, pay as little as possible. If we're going to pay interest, have the rate be as low as possible. If we're going to pay interest, do it in an organized way, a faster way to pay it for as short amount of time as possible. And if we're going to pay interest, try to get as much of it to a tax-deductible position as we can. And so that's our Impact School of Money for the day. That is class for the day. We learned about Debt Snowball. So thank you for joining us again. This was episode 16. Join us on Thursday for episode 17, where we'll talk more about debt, eliminating it, and getting yourself and those that you care about into a position where they can be debt-free and totally financially independent. Class dismissed.